Hello, and thank you for joining. Today I would like to talk about the basics of lighting angles and how that relates to the sun in landscape photography. I have a simple demonstration set up here in my living room, so let's go ahead and get going. Alright, so let me talk you through what I've got set up here for you. I am on the floor of my living room, and you can see that right here I've taken a houseplant from my bookshelf over here and set it down, let me move over here, on this white sheet that I have taken off of, hung off of a little cabinet. Basically, I'm just trying to minimize any kind of distractions in the background because I want to focus on what the light is doing through the plant and making it as clear and simple as possible. You can see here in the background, I've taken a kind of a white table and I've set it up behind it. That is to help bounce some light back, to help fill things out so it's not quite as contrasty. You can see right here on the floor, I have set up my camera on a small little travel tripod so that it is low, a little bit more level with the tree, a little bit of plant. And then you can see over here, let me spin this around. All I've done is I've taken a little cheap clip light with an incandescent lamp inside of it and clipped it onto my main tripod. This way I can move it up and down and get different angles and get it over the top of the plant so we can play with those different angles. I've got currently set up for a low angle, which is going to be similar to early morning, late afternoon, evening time, kind of that quote unquote golden hour time. And yeah, let's get going. So now I've raised the light up. It's almost my height. This angle coming down on the plant is much steeper, is going to represent a little bit more of late morning, early afternoon, so that sun's higher in the sky. So we'll take an image of this angle and see what it looks like. All right, so as you can see, I have now set it up high overhead. It's right in line with the plant. Never mind this cord. I'm having to run extension cords across here to get this lamp in place. This should help to illustrate that that midday, that noon light. It's not, I can't replicate the sun, so there's not enough bounce coming back up to really show how flat that light becomes when it's just all overhead. I should be able to show you at least kind of how it kind of flattens the plant. And this is a very three-dimensional plant with all those leaves and things. So hopefully this is helping, and I'm going to turn this guy on, take a shot here of this one, and then we'll talk about it. All right, I've got the images in Photoshop and I've got a fresh cup of coffee. So let's hop in here and look at these images together. Okay, here we are looking at the side lighting. The light is coming in at this low, straight level. We can see it is lit up here and along this whole side. This can be effective in creating a little bit of drama, or if this lighting is grazing across, like you can see here on this leaf, you get a little bit of interesting texture. However, what it doesn't do is it doesn't really give you dimension across the object. It's a little bit more about grazing light, or it can be used very effectively to accentuate that side, to make something look a little bit taller. So something like a cypress, or if you're trying to accentuate a person, that person can look a little taller if you're lighting just the side, because it accentuates that length. But you can see this whole side is in darkness. Can be used very creatively to create drama. Can be very, very effective in autumn when trees are losing their leaves, or into winter when it's just the branches, because then you're highlighting all those branches. Still is an interesting picture. Here we are in the mid lighting. So this is coming down such as this. What is kind of nice about this compared to the other one is now we have a bit of shadow on the trunk. So it's clearer to me that my eyes are supposed to be looking in this area. This is also giving a little bit of light to the height up in here. So for things that are facing up, and then letting it drop off underneath, it's giving it a little bit more of a shape and a roundness to the top. We are still having quite a bit of darkness here and in here. What that's kind of doing is allowing those brighter leaves to kind of stand out, with those darker ones recede, adds a little bit of dimension to it, but you still are coming in very much from the side, so that can have a similar effect to the lower side lighting without kind of increasing that height to it. But a very viable option to create the roundness, or if you're wanting to show a peak or a height to something, and also control focus by not looking at the trunk. Very, very viable option there. Here we are on our high overhead light. This is the kind of light that you will typically see in amateur landscape photographers who have gone out on a hike and it's 2 o'clock and they've got to the vista point, taking their picture of what's beautiful in front of them, and the camera is seeing so much light, everything flattens. You can see here that all of this is very flat light. Now, this light, of course, coming from straight above like this, in nature there would be a lot of bounce light coming back up, which would light in all of this area here. Doesn't work so well here because the single bulb is not that bright, nowhere near the sun. But you can see it's a fairly evenly lit all the way across, and in here all of this is kind of the same tone. There's no texture to it. You can see the details, you can see it's revealing, but it's kind of flat, it's kind of meh. You can use this, you can take okay pictures, but because the amount of light and the amount of light that's getting scattered, it really flattens your images out. And that's kind of what most people struggle with, is they go out when it's nice and pleasant and when their schedules allow, and then they look at their pictures and go, oh, and it's not what they remember, because your brain is processing and adjusting for all that light and telling you what you're seeing. So that, in a very simplified nutshell, is 3 basic angles of light. So you have a low, a mid, and a high angle coming onto the subject here. So what I'm doing now is I've got 3 more ideas of what I want to show you. One is what I'm set up for right now, with the light directly behind the camera. So it's basically shooting straight over and coming flat into this plant. So I'm going to work on this one that's behind me. I'm going to move a shot to where the light is coming in at a 45-degree angle, give you an idea of what it's like to shoot with the sun over your shoulder instead of right behind you. And then I'm going to try to figure out how to get the light behind the subject to backlight it, so as if you were shooting into the sun. So I'm going to get these 3 shots set up, and then we'll talk about them. All right, so this is the low direct on. Pretty much this light is right behind the camera. It is shooting straight on, as if the sun was directly behind you. Even more so than that flat overhead light, everything is evenly lit. There is just even light everywhere. It's unflattering for the depth and texture that a plant has. It has effectively pushed this plant to be a flat image. You have a little bit of shadow back in here where some leaves are creating shadow on them. This trunk looks absolutely flat. It has nothing to it that would be telling me it's round. This lighting, however, works really well for headshots, but for plants, for nature, for hillsides, anything like that, not that great. Okay, so now we are at the 45-degree light. Now this is both 45 degrees up and 45 degrees off. And what I mean by that is if the camera were here and the plant were here, this light is coming in such as that. It is also coming in such as that. So 45 up, 45 off. Think about this lighting when you're positioning yourself to take a subject. Putting this light to be offset and putting it over your shoulders is going to create more depth. You can see in this picture here, you have so much more texture and depth, and you have all this texture we haven't seen before up in here and across these leaves. There's shadow on this side of the trunk, giving it a definite clue that that trunk is round. You have depth inside of here, but you've got highlights out here. This is wonderful lighting for the depth and dimension of plants or of any kind of natural element that allows for light to travel into it and through pieces like branches and leaves. What's really nice about this is it gives you a clear sense of the roundness of this plant, of how it's shaped. It doesn't look flat, it doesn't look thin, it doesn't look anything else. It finally looks like there is depth going through it, that there are parts front and back. This is one of my favorite kind of lighting here to try to capture. I do like it a little bit lower in the sky when I'm dealing with the sun itself, but for this purpose, it works really well. This is something to think about when you are out. Look at those times when that sun is lower in the sky and try to figure out how to position yourself so that sun is shooting over one of your shoulders to create more depth and dimension into your subject. Lastly, we have our backlighting. Now you can see that I did crop this. That is only because I had to shoot at a different angle for setting this up because I kind of had to punt a little bit. So I just cropped out my fireplace and things like that. I didn't do anything to the image itself. It's just trying to keep the focus in there for you guys. Backlighting is a very useful technique when done well. It does a few things for you. For things that have some transparency, such as these leaves, it allows for the texture and kind of the skeleton of it to be seen. You can see a leaf in a way that you haven't seen it before, when the light's coming through from behind. It allows for it to glow a little bit. The other thing that backlighting is going to do for you is it's going to kind of highlight all these edges. This is in the studio world, this is known as rim lighting, and it allows to give a shape, a definitive shape to the subject. That's why quite often when you see a really nice portrait picture, there's a little bit of a rim. The downside is you are looking at the shadow side. All of this is in shade. Not a bad thing if that is the creative aspect that you are going for, but it is something that is very difficult to shoot because you are shooting into the sun. And that sun is so bright and those shadows are so dark in comparison, your camera has a really, really hard time seeing all that. Fantastic to do when it's done well, so practice it. Practice on it. But don't look into the sun. That is not a good thing to do. Well, I hope you found this enjoyable, and I really hope that you learned something from this. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you for joining me.